In 1793, the guillotine fell on King Louis XVI, marking the end of an era. But what became of the royal children left behind? 4 were born in the golden halls of Versailles. A princess destined for exile, 2 boys whose titles vanished before their time, and a baby girl whose life ended before she could walk. They were born to rule, yet lived and died as victims of the age they inherited. From the quiet chambers of the Temple prison to the DNA labs of modern Europe, the story of Louis XVI's children spans not only tragedy, but also survival, myth, and historical closure. Today, centuries later, their fates still ask the same question. When a dynasty falls, what becomes of the children of the fallen king? This is their complete story, from birth to death, from palace to prison, from legend to scientific truth. On December 19, 1778, at the Palace of Versailles, Marie Antoinette gave birth to her first child. The infant was Marie-Thérèse Charlotte, named for her paternal great-grandmother and her maternal grandmother, Empress Maria Theresa of Austria. The birth came 4 years after the royal marriage, a delay that had caused considerable anxiety at court. Marie-Thérèse represented hope for the dynasty, the first tangible proof that the royal union would produce heirs. Though court tradition favored male successors, her arrival was celebrated with the customary Te Deum at Notre Dame and the distribution of alms to the poor. Marie-Thérèse spent her earliest years within the elaborate protocol of Versailles. Her apartments adjoined those of her parents in the palace's royal wing. Court etiquette dictated that even her daily routines, feeding, bathing, dressing, be conducted according to precise ceremony. The Duchess of Polignac served as her governess, overseeing a household of nurses, tutors, and attendants. By age 4, Marie-Thérèse began formal education. Her curriculum included catechism, French literature, geography, and music. She learned to speak German, reflecting her Habsburg heritage, and received instruction in drawing and needlework. Contemporary accounts describe a serious, observant child who displayed early signs of the dignity that would define her adult character. Her childhood companions included the children of court nobles, but her closest relationship developed with her younger brothers as they arrived. The palace gardens of Versailles provided space for supervised play, while the Petit Trianon offered a more intimate setting when the family sought refuge from court ceremony. The political crisis that engulfed France beginning in 1789 fundamentally altered Marie-Thérèse's existence. At age 10, she witnessed the transformation of her father from absolute monarch to constitutional king, constrained by the National Assembly's decrees. On October 6, 1789, the royal family departed Versailles under duress, forced by a Parisian mob to relocate to the Tuileries Palace. Marie-Thérèse, now 11, found herself confined within the walls of a palace that had become both residence and prison. The elaborate court life of Versailles gave way to a more restricted existence, with the family's movements monitored by revolutionary guards. The attempted flight to Varennes in June 1791 marked a turning point. Marie-Thérèse, then 12, experienced the family's capture at Varennes and their humiliating return to Paris under guard. The failed escape attempt destroyed any remaining illusions about their status as anything other than prisoners of the state. Following the storming of the Tuileries on August 10, 1792, the family was transferred to the Temple, a medieval fortress in the Marais district. The Temple became Marie-Thérèse's world for the next 3 years. The 13-year-old princess found herself confined to a few rooms with her parents, her younger brother Louis Charles, and her aunt Madame Elisabeth. The execution of Louis XVI on January 21, 1793, shattered what remained of Marie-Thérèse's childhood. At 14, she became an orphan in all but name, as her mother, Marie Antoinette, was transferred to the Conciergerie prison in August 1793. Marie Antoinette's execution on October 16, 1793, left Marie-Thérèse alone with her aunt and brother in the Temple. The separation from her brother Louis Charles in July 1793 added another layer of isolation. Revolutionary authorities removed the 8-year-old boy from the family's quarters, placing him under the supervision of a cobbler named Antoine Simon. Marie-Thérèse would not see her brother again before his death in June 1795. During these years of captivity, Marie-Thérèse maintained a journal, writing in a mixture of French and German to preserve some privacy from her guards. These entries reveal a young woman struggling to maintain her faith and dignity while witnessing the systematic destruction of her family. The execution of Madame Elisabeth on May 10, 1794, left Marie-Thérèse entirely alone in the temple. For more than a year, she remained the sole survivor of the immediate royal family, attended only by servants under constant surveillance. On December 19, 1795, her 17th birthday, Marie-Thérèse was released from the temple as part of a prisoner exchange. The Directory government traded her for French prisoners held by Austria, including several prominent revolutionaries captured in military campaigns. The exchange took place at the Austrian frontier near Hüningen. Marie-Thérèse crossed from French to Austrian territory, leaving behind the only country she had ever known. Her destination was Vienna, where her Habsburg relatives awaited her arrival. The Austrian court received Marie-Thérèse with ceremony appropriate to her rank, but her position remained ambiguous. She was simultaneously a Habsburg archduchess by blood and the daughter of the executed French king. Emperor Francis II, her maternal uncle, provided her with apartments at the Hofburg Palace and an appropriate household, but also maintained strict supervision over her activities and correspondence. Marie-Thérèse's years in Vienna were marked by careful isolation from political intrigue. The Austrian government, while monarchist in principle, had no desire to provoke renewed conflict with France by supporting Bourbon restoration efforts too openly. Consequently, Marie-Thérèse lived in comfortable confinement, unable to marry without imperial consent or engage in political correspondence. During this period, she developed into a symbol of Bourbon legitimacy for French royalists in exile. Her survival represented dynastic continuity, making her one of the most significant figures in the émigré community. However, her actual political influence remained limited by Austrian restrictions and her own cautious temperament. In 1799, Marie-Thérèse married her cousin Louis-Antoine de Bourbon, Duc d'Angoulême, son of the future Charles X. The marriage, arranged to strengthen Bourbon unity, took place at the Mittel Palace in Courland, where the exiled royal family had established temporary residence. The union represented both dynastic continuity and political calculation. Louis-Antoine, as the eldest son of the Comte d'Artois, stood second in line to the theoretical throne after his father. The marriage consolidated Bourbon claims while providing Marie-Thérèse with an appropriate rank as Duchess of Angoulême. The couple's return to France began in 1814 with Napoleon's first abdication. Marie-Thérèse, now 35, entered Paris alongside the restored Bourbon monarchy. Her uncle, the Comte de Provence, became Louis XVIII, while she assumed the position of senior royal lady, as Louis XVIII remained unmarried. During the Bourbon Restoration, 1014 out in 1830, Marie-Thérèse played an active role in court life and charitable works. She patronized orphanages and religious institutions, drawing explicitly on her own experience of loss and displacement. Her public appearances reinforced the monarchy's message of national reconciliation after the Revolutionary and Napoleonic periods. The Hundred Days Crisis of 1815 tested Marie-Thérèse's political resolve. When Napoleon returned from Elba, she accompanied Louis XVIII to Ghent, but also advocated for military resistance. Some contemporary observers noted her influence over royal decision-making during this period, leading to descriptions of her as queen in all but name. Following Louis XVIII's death in 1824, her father-in-law became Charles X, making her husband the dauphin and herself the dauphin. This elevation brought increased ceremonial responsibilities and political visibility. Marie-Thérèse participated in the elaborate coronation ceremony at Reims Cathedral in 1825, the last such ceremony in French history. The July Revolution of 1830 ended the Bourbon Restoration and forced the royal family into final exile. Marie-Thérèse, at 51, found herself once again departing France under revolutionary pressure. The family's abdication and departure for England marked the end of her brief return to prominence. The exiled court established itself first at Holyrood Palace in Edinburgh, then moved to Prague, and finally settled at Frostorf Castle in Austria. Marie-Thérèse adapted to this reduced existence with the same dignity she had displayed throughout her life's various upheavals. During these final decades, she maintained correspondence with legitimist supporters in France while engaging in charitable works within the émigré community. Her childless marriage meant that her death would mark the end of Louis XVI's direct lineage, a fact that weighed heavily on dynastic considerations. Marie-Thérèse died on October 19, 1851, at Frosdorf Castle, aged 72. Her death occurred during the Second French Republic, with no possibility of return to France. She was buried at the Kostanjevica Monastery in present-day Slovenia, where her tomb remains a site of pilgrimage for monarchist visitors. Marie-Thérèse's death completed the extinction of Louis XVI's direct line. Her survival through revolution, captivity, exile, and restoration made her a unique witness to the transformation of European monarchy. Contemporaries and historians have noted her resilience and dignity in the face of extraordinary circumstances. She became known as the Orphan of the Temple, a title that captured both her personal tragedy and her symbolic significance. Her life spanned the entire revolutionary epoch, from the last years of the Ancien Régime through the establishment of the Second Empire. Modern visitors to Kostanjevica Monastery continue to visit her tomb, maintaining the memory of the last direct descendant of Louis XVI. Her survival, childless marriage, and death in exile completed a narrative that began with the promise of dynastic renewal and ended with historical closure. On October 22, 1781, Marie Antoinette gave birth to her second child at the Palace of Versailles. The infant was Louis-Joseph Xavier François, immediately granted the title of dauphin as the heir apparent to the French throne. His birth fulfilled the dynasty's fundamental requirement, a male successor to continue the Bourbon line. Court celebration exceeded even that which had marked Marie-Thérèse's arrival 3 years earlier. Cannon fire announced the birth throughout Paris, while Te Deum services at Notre Dame offered thanksgiving for the royal heir. The Dauphin's birth represented political stability for the monarchy and personal vindication for Marie Antoinette, whose ability to produce male heritier heirs had been questioned by court gossips. Louis-Joseph was baptized with great ceremony, his godparents including Emperor Joseph II of Austria and Empress Catherine II of Russia, represented by proxy. The choice of sponsors reflected France's position within the European diplomatic system and the monarchy's confidence in its dynastic future. From birth, however, Louis-Joseph displayed concerning signs of physical weakness. Court physicians noted his delicate constitution, frequent respiratory difficulties, and slow physical development. These health concerns were initially attributed to typical childhood ailments, but their persistence raised private anxieties among his parents and medical attendants. Despite his physical frailties, Louis-Joseph received education appropriate to his destined role. His tutors included the Bishop of Limoges for religious instruction and various academicians for secular subjects. The curriculum emphasized French history, Latin, mathematics, and geography, designed to prepare him for kingship. Contemporary accounts describe an intelligent child with particular aptitude for languages and memorization. He learned to read early and displayed curiosity about historical subjects, especially the reigns of his ancestors. Court observers noted his serious temperament, which contrasted with the more playful dispositions of his siblings. Louis-Joseph's public appearances were carefully managed to project an image of dynastic strength while accommodating his health limitations. He participated in formal court ceremonies when possible, including religious observances and diplomatic receptions. These occasions served to familiarize the nobility and diplomatic corps with the future king. His relationship with his parents was marked by their evident concern for his welfare. Marie Antoinette adjusted her schedule to spend additional time with the dauphin, while Louis XVI took personal interest in his son's education. The king's own reserved temperament found echo in his son's serious disposition. The birth of Louis Charles in 1785 provided Louis-Joseph with a younger brother, creating the dynasty's insurance of multiple male heirs. The two boys developed a close relationship despite their age difference, with Louis-Joseph displaying protective instincts toward his younger sibling. By 1788, Louis-Joseph's health problems had become more pronounced and difficult to conceal. Court physicians diagnosed what modern medicine would recognize as spinal tuberculosis, though contemporary medical understanding lacked such precision. His condition required increasingly frequent absences from public ceremonies. The final year of Louis Joseph's life coincided with the mounting political crisis that would culminate in revolution. As France convened the Estates General for the first time since 1614, the Dauphin's condition deteriorated rapidly. Medical treatments of the period proved ineffective against his underlying condition. Court physicians attempted various remedies, including changes of air, mineral waters, and bloodletting, none of which provided lasting relief. The child's suffering was evident to all who observed him during his final months. On June 4, 1789, Louis-Joseph died at the Château de Meudon, where he had been taken in hopes that country air might improve his condition. He was 7 years old. His death occurred just 6 weeks after the opening of the Estates General, a timing that contemporary observers noted with various interpretations. The Dauphin's funeral took place at the Basilica of Saint-Denis, following traditional protocol for royal burials. His heart was separately entombed at Val-de-Grâce, according to Bourbon custom. The ceremonies occurred as political crisis deepened, with many noting the symbolic significance of the dynasty losing its heir as the monarchy itself faced unprecedented challenges. Revolutionary events later destroyed Louis Joseph's tomb at Saint-Denis, along with other royal monuments. His remains, like those of other French kings and queens, were dispersed during the systematic desecration of royal burial sites in 1793. Louis Joseph's brief life and death acquired symbolic meaning as the revolution progressed. Royalist writers later interpreted his death as portending the monarchy's fall, while revolutionary propagandists saw divine judgment against the institution of hereditary kingship. His death elevated his younger brother Louis Charles to the position of dauphin, a change that would prove tragically significant during the family's subsequent captivity. Had Louis Joseph survived, the revolutionary government would have faced different dynastic calculations regarding the treatment of royal children. Medical historians have studied Louis Joseph's case as representative of the health challenges facing aristocratic families of the period. His condition illustrated the limitations of contemporary medicine while highlighting the genetic vulnerabilities that may have affected the Bourbon line. The Dauphin's death marked the end of the monarchy's confidence in its automatic renewal. His loss removed the dynasty's insurance of multiple male heirs and placed the entire succession on the shoulders of his younger brother, then only 4 years old. Modern commemorations of Louis Joseph remain limited, overshadowed by the more dramatic fates of his siblings. His brief existence represents the lost promise of a dynasty that expected automatic continuity but faced biological and political extinction within a single generation. On March 27, 1785, Marie Antoinette gave birth to her third child at the Palace of Versailles. The infant was Louis Charles, Duke of Normandy, whose arrival ensured the dynasty's succession with a second male heir. His birth provided the monarchy with the security of multiple princes while relieving pressure on his older brother, the ailing Dauphin Louis Joseph. Court records describe Louis Charles as a robust, healthy infant whose physical vitality contrasted markedly with his brother's frailty. His early development proceeded normally, displaying the energy and curiosity typical of healthy children. Contemporary observers noted his animated temperament and quick intelligence. The Duke of Normandy received traditional aristocratic education from an early age. His tutors included religious instructors for catechism and moral formation, language masters for French and Latin, and various specialists for mathematics, geography, and drawing. Despite his youth, the curriculum acknowledged his potential role as royal successor, should circumstance require. Louis Charles developed particularly close relationships with both parents. Marie Antoinette found in her younger son the spirited companionship that her eldest son's health problems precluded, while Louis XVI appreciated the boy's intellectual curiosity and eagerness to learn. Contemporary accounts describe an affectionate family dynamic centered on the children's education and welfare. The child's personality emerged as notably different from his siblings. Where Marie-Thérèse displayed serious dignity and Louis Joseph showed scholarly inclination, Louis Charles exhibited playful energy and social confidence. Court observers noted his ability to charm visitors and his enjoyment of public attention during ceremonial occasions. The death of Louis Joseph on June 4, 1789, transformed Louis Charles from spare heir into Dauphin of France. At 4 years old, he became the focal point of dynastic continuity during the monarchy's gravest crisis. The elevation occurred as the Estates General convened and political revolution gathered momentum. Louis Charles adapted to his new status with apparent ease, though his youth prevented full comprehension of the political implications. His parents maintained his education and routine while adjusting protocols to reflect his position as heir apparent. The child's natural confidence seemed to accommodate the increased ceremonial attention his new rank required. Contemporary portraits from this period show Louis Charles in formal court dress appropriate to his status, but also capture his youthful energy and bright expression. These images, created as the monarchy faced mounting challenges, project dynastic confidence while documenting the human face of political upheaval. His relationship with his sister Marie-Thérèse deepened during this period, as both children experienced the growing restrictions and tensions affecting the royal family. Despite their age difference, they developed protective bonds that would prove crucial during their subsequent captivity. The forced departure from Versailles in October 1789 marked the beginning of Louis Charles's experience as a prisoner of the Revolution. At 4 years old, he found himself confined within the Tuileries Palace under the constant supervision of Revolutionary Guards. His world contracted from the vast spaces of Versailles to a few interconnected rooms. The attempted flight to Varennes in June 1791 exposed Louis Charles to the full hostility of revolutionary crowds. Contemporary accounts describe the 6-year-old prince's fear during the family's capture and their humiliating return to Paris under guard. The failed escape shattered any remaining illusions about their status as anything other than state prisoners. Following the assault on the Tuileries on August 10, 1792, the family was transferred to the Temple Fortress. Louis Charles, now 7, entered what would become his final residence. The medieval tower provided security for the revolutionary government while serving as an effective prison for the royal family. During the early months at the Temple, Louis Charles remained with his parents and sister under relatively humane conditions. Revolutionary authorities permitted the family to maintain some semblance of domestic routine, including the child's continued education and play. These months represented the last period of familial normalcy in his brief life. The execution of Louis XVI on January 21, 1793, devastated Louis Charles. Contemporary accounts describe the 8-year-old boy's grief and confusion at his father's death. Revolutionary protocol immediately declared him Louis XVII, though the Republic recognized no such title. His theoretical kingship existed only in royalist imagination. The separation from his mother and sister in July 1793 marked the beginning of Louis Charles's final ordeal. Revolutionary authorities removed him from the family quarters and placed him under the supervision of Antoine Simon, a cobbler, appointed as his guardian. This separation ended his family relationships and began a period of systematic isolation and abuse. Under Simon's supervision, Louis Charles experienced deliberate mistreatment designed to break his spirit and royal identity. The boy was forced to wear peasant clothing, subjected to crude language and behavior, and deprived of education and proper hygiene. Revolutionary ideology viewed this treatment as necessary to erase aristocratic conditioning. Contemporary accounts suggest that Louis Charles was required to denounce his parents and the monarchy, though the reliability of such reports remains debated by historians. The child's isolation prevented independent verification of his treatment, creating uncertainty about the specific abuses he endured. When Simon departed in January 1794, Louis Charles was left essentially alone in his cell. Revolutionary authorities provided minimal care, viewing the boy primarily as a political liability whose death would simplify their situation. His health began deteriorating rapidly under these conditions of neglect. Medical attention remained sporadic and inadequate. The few physicians permitted to examine Louis Charles noted signs of severe physical and psychological trauma. Contemporary medical records describe symptoms consistent with tuberculosis, scrofula, and other conditions associated with malnutrition and poor sanitation. The boy's isolation was nearly complete during his final year. Observers noted his withdrawal from human contact and apparent loss of speech. Whether this represented psychological trauma, deliberate silence, or physical incapacity remains unclear from available evidence. Louis Charles died on June 8, 1795, in his cell at the Temple. He was 10 years old. Official records attributed his death to tuberculosis and complications from prolonged illness. The autopsy, performed by Dr. Philippe Jean Pelletan, confirmed severe physical deterioration consistent with the recorded symptoms. During the autopsy, Dr. Pelletan secretly removed the child's heart, concealing it in his handkerchief. This action, motivated by royalist sympathy, began a complex chain of custody that would span more than 2 centuries. The heart's removal occurred without official authorization and remained unknown to revolutionary authorities. The body was buried in an unmarked grave at the Sainte Marguerite Cemetery in Paris. Revolutionary protocol denied any ceremonial recognition of the child's royal birth or theoretical status. The burial proceeded with minimal attendance and no religious ceremony. Official announcement of the death emphasized the child's status as Louis Charles Capet, denying any royal title or legitimate significance. The revolutionary government presented his demise as the natural conclusion of a health crisis, avoiding any suggestion of mistreatment or deliberate neglect. The circumstances of Louis Charles's death, combined with his isolation during the final months, created persistent rumors about potential escape or substitution. Various theories suggested that revolutionary sympathizers had rescued the boy, replacing him with another child who subsequently died in the Temple. These rumors gained credibility from the secrecy surrounding his final period and the political advantages that would have accrued to anyone successfully rescuing the legitimate king. Royalist networks had theoretical motivation for such a rescue, though no credible evidence supports actual escape attempts. Throughout the 19th century, various individuals claimed to be the escaped Louis XVI. The most prominent pretender was Karl Wilhelm Naundorf, who gained significant support among French royalists. His claims were based on alleged childhood memories and physical characteristics, though never definitively proven. Other claimants included Mathurin Bruneau and Jean-Marie Hervagault, each presenting different narratives of escape and survival. The proliferation of pretenders reflected both royalist hopes and the absence of definitive proof regarding Louis Charles's fate. These claims created lasting uncertainty about the Dauphin's death, contributing to a mythology of survival that persisted into the modern era. The absence of witnesses to his final period and the politically charged nature of his situation provided fertile ground for alternative narratives. The question of Louis Charles's identity remained unresolved until modern scientific techniques provided definitive answers. In 1999, Belgian researchers obtained permission to conduct mitochondrial DNA testing on the preserved heart that Dr. Pelletan had removed during the 1795 autopsy. The heart had followed a complex path of custody through the 19th and 20th centuries. After Pelletan's death, it passed through various royalist hands before eventually being deposited at the Basilica of Saint-Denis. Its authentication required careful historical documentation of this chain of custody. In 2000, researchers compared mitochondrial DNA from the heart with samples from Marie Antoinette's hair and from living maternal relatives, including Queen Anne of Romania. Mitochondrial DNA inheritance through the maternal line provided the key to establishing identity. The results, announced in 2001, confirmed that the heart belonged to a son of Marie Antoinette. This scientific evidence definitively established that Louis Charles had died in the Temple in 1795, ending 2 centuries of speculation about potential survival or escape. Additional testing in 2004 provided further confirmation using improved techniques and additional reference samples. These results achieved scientific certainty about the boy's identity and fate, resolving one of history's most persistent mysteries. On June 8, 2004, exactly 209 years after Louis Charles's death, his heart was formally reburied at the Basilica of Saint-Denis during a ceremony attended by members of European royal families and French officials. The ceremony provided official recognition of his identity and royal status. The reburial service included representatives from both Bourbon branches claiming legitimacy, the Orléans and the descendants of Charles X. Their joint participation symbolically resolved dynastic disputes regarding recognition of Louis XVI's status and suffering. Cardinal Jean-Marie Lesdiguières celebrated the funeral mass, emphasizing themes of reconciliation and historical closure. The ceremony acknowledged both the child's innocence and the broader tragedy of revolutionary violence against civilians. The Heart's entombment at Saint-Denis placed Louis Charles among his royal ancestors, providing the ceremonial recognition denied at his original burial. This gesture represented French institutional acknowledgement of the monarchy's historical role while avoiding contemporary political implications. Modern visitors to Saint-Denis can view the memorial to Louis XVI, which includes reference to his status as the child king and victim of revolutionary excess. The memorial serves both historical and educational purposes, explaining his story within the broader context of the revolutionary period. Louis Charles became a symbol of innocence destroyed by political extremism, transcending specific monarchist or republican sympathies. His fate illustrated the human cost of revolutionary upheaval and the vulnerability of children to adult political conflicts. 19th century royalist mythology transformed him into a martyr figure, representing the legitimist cause and the moral failure of revolutionary ideology. This symbolism influenced royalist political messaging throughout the Bourbon Restoration and subsequent monarchist movements. Literary and artistic works drew inspiration from his story, creating romanticized narratives of royal suffering and lost childhood. These cultural productions contributed to broader European romantic fascination with fallen monarchies and noble tragedy. Modern historical assessment emphasizes Louis Charles's status as a victim of circumstances beyond his control or comprehension. His treatment in the Temple reflects broader patterns of political violence against families and children during periods of revolutionary upheaval. The scientific resolution of questions about his fate demonstrates the potential for modern techniques to resolve historical mysteries. His case became a model for applying DNA analysis to historical problems, contributing to the development of genetic genealogy as a historical tool. His preserved heart remains a tangible connection to the revolutionary period, serving both memorial and educational functions. The relic's scientific authentication provides closure to historical speculation while maintaining symbolic significance for those who commemorate the fallen monarchy. On July 9, 1786, Marie Antoinette gave birth to her fourth and final child at the Palace of Versailles. The infant was Sophie-Hélène Béatrice, named for her paternal aunt and various royal relatives. Her arrival completed the royal family's composition: one daughter and three sons who represented the monarchy's future. Sophie's birth occurred during a period of mounting political tension in France, though the immediate court celebration proceeded according to traditional protocol. Te Deum services at Notre Dame offered thanksgiving for the newest royal child, while the customary distribution of alms marked the occasion for the Parisian poor. As the fourth child, Sophie held no direct succession rights and faced no immediate expectations of political significance. Court records describe her as a healthy infant who developed normally during her first months. Her existence provided the royal couple with personal satisfaction while contributing to the dynasty's public image of fertility and continuity. Contemporary accounts note that Marie Antoinette found particular pleasure in Sophie's care, perhaps because the infant required no immediate consideration of future political roles. The Queen's attention to her youngest child reflected both maternal affection and relief from the pressures associated with raising the male heirs. Sophie's baptism followed court protocol, though with less elaborate ceremony than had marked her brother's christenings. Her godparents included members of the extended royal family, reflecting her position within the broader Bourbon kinship network. Sophie's health began deteriorating in the spring of 1787, when she was approximately 9 months old. Court physicians diagnosed symptoms consistent with what modern medicine would recognize as childhood tuberculosis, though contemporary medical understanding lacked such precision. The infant's condition worsened rapidly despite medical attention from the royal physicians. Treatment options available in the 18th century proved inadequate against her underlying illness. Her parents maintained hope for recovery while preparing themselves for the possibility of loss. On June 19, 1787, Sophie died at Versailles before reaching her first birthday. She was 11 months old. Her death occurred during a period when her older brother Louis-Joseph was also displaying concerning health problems, creating anxiety about the family's medical vulnerabilities. The funeral arrangements reflected Sophie's infant status and brief life. While conducted with appropriate ceremony for a royal child, the proceedings were more modest than those typical for adult members of the royal family. She was buried at Saint-Denis, following Bourbon tradition for royal burials. Court mourning for Sophie was formal but brief, as protocol recognized the different implications of infant mortality compared to the deaths of adult royalty. Her parents grieved privately while maintaining their public responsibilities during a period of increasing political pressure. Sophie's brief existence became footnoted in the larger narrative of the royal family's tragedy during the Revolutionary period. Her early death preceded the political upheavals that would destroy the monarchy and disperse her surviving siblings. Historical assessments note that her survival would not have altered the revolutionary government's treatment of the royal family, as female children posed no direct threat to Republican ideology. However, her presence might have provided additional companionship for Marie-Thérèse during their subsequent captivity. Medical historians have studied Sophie's case alongside that of her brother Louis-Joseph as evidence of possible genetic health vulnerabilities within the Bourbon line. Their early deaths illustrated the fragility of royal succession despite the appearance of dynastic security provided by multiple heirs. Contemporary memoirs and court records preserve limited information about Sophie's personality or specific characteristics, reflecting her brief lifespan and infant status. Most references to her appear in the context of family correspondence and official birth and death announcements. Modern commemorations of the royal family occasionally include Sophie among the victims of the Revolutionary period, though her natural death preceded the political violence that claimed her parents and brother. Her memory serves as a reminder of the ordinary human vulnerabilities that affected even the most privileged families. Sophie's burial site at Saint-Denis was disturbed during the revolutionary desecration of royal tombs in 1793, along with those of other Bourbon family members. Her remains, like those of her ancestors, were dispersed during the systematic destruction of monarchical symbols. The brevity of Sophie's life represents the fragility of infant survival in the 18th century, even within the royal family, with access to the best available medical care. Her death illustrates that political upheaval was not the only threat facing the royal children. Disease and medical limitations claimed lives regardless of social status. The death of Marie-Thérèse Charlotte in 1851 marked the complete extinction of Louis XVI's direct bloodline. Her childless marriage to Louis-Antoine d'Angoulême ensured that no descendants would carry the genetic inheritance of the last executed king of France. This biological terminus completed a narrative that had begun with royal confidence in dynastic continuity. Louis XVI's 4 children had represented the monarchy's insurance against succession crisis. 2 sons provided male heirs, while daughters offered diplomatic marriage opportunities and dynastic backup. The Revolutionary period destroyed these calculations, leaving only Marie-Thérèse to carry the family's biological and symbolic legacy through 73 years of life. The extinction occurred despite the survival of collateral Bourbon lines through Louis XVI's brothers. The Comte de Provence, who became Louis XVIII, died childless in 1824. The Comte d'Artois, who became Charles X, produced descendants who maintained Bourbon claims. However, these collateral lines represented cousins rather than direct descendants of the martyred king. Contemporary observers noted the symbolic significance of this biological ending. Marie-Thérèse's death removed the last living person who had directly experienced life at Versailles under the Ancien Régime. Her passing completed the transition from monarchical to republican France, eliminating the human bridge between the old and new orders. Despite the extinction of Louis XVI's direct line, the Bourbon claim to the French throne continued through collateral descendants. Charles X's abdication in 1830 had designated his grandson, the Comte de Chambord, as legitimate heir. This transmission bypassed Louis Philippe's Orleanist line, which legitimists considered usurpatory. The Comte de Chambord's childless death in 1883 created further succession complications. Legitimist recognition passed to the Spanish Bourbon line through the descendants of Philip V, while Orleanist supporters maintained their separate claim through Louis Philippe's descendants. These divisions reflected 19th century political alignments rather than clear legal precedents. Modern French royalist movements remain divided between these competing claims. Legitimists support the descendants of the Spanish Bourbons, currently represented by Prince Louis de Bourbon, while Orleanists recognize the descendants of Louis Philippe, currently headed by Prince Jean d'Orléans. Both lines trace their claims through brothers of Louis XVI rather than his direct descendants. The absence of Louis XVI's direct descendants from these succession disputes removes one potential source of complication while emphasizing the historical rather than biological nature of modern royal claims. Neither current claimant possesses the emotional resonance that direct descent from the executed king might provide. The 2001 confirmation of Louis Charles's identity through mitochondrial DNA testing provided scientific closure to the most persistent mystery surrounding Louis XVI's children. This resolution demonstrated the potential for modern genetic techniques to resolve centuries-old historical questions. The DNA evidence definitively established that Louis Charles died in the Temple in 1795, ending speculation about potential survival or escape. This scientific certainty removed the foundation for alternative narratives about hidden royal descendants or secret survival stories that had persisted for 2 centuries. Additional DNA research has examined other royal remains and artifacts, contributing to broader understanding of Bourbon family genetics and health patterns. These studies illuminate the medical vulnerabilities that may have contributed to the high infant mortality within the royal family. The preservation of organic materials from the 18th century has enabled retrospective genetic analysis impossible during previous eras. Louis Charles's case became a model for applying modern scientific techniques to historical problems, influencing similar investigations of other disputed royal remains. Contemporary France maintains complicated relationships with its monarchical past. The story of Louis XVI's children serves educational purposes in explaining the human impact of revolutionary upheaval while avoiding direct political implications for modern republican institutions. Tourist sites associated with the royal family, including Versailles, the Temple site, and Saint-Denis, incorporate their story into broader historical narratives. These presentations emphasize universal themes of family, loss, and childhood vulnerability rather than specific monarchist or republican interpretations. Cultural productions continue drawing inspiration from their fates, particularly the story of Louis Charles and the survival of Marie-Thérèse. Literature, film, and historical fiction explore themes of innocence, political violence, and resilience that transcend specific political allegiances. The children's story provides a human face for abstract historical processes, illustrating how large-scale political changes affect individual lives. Their experiences demonstrate that even the most privileged positions offer no protection against historical forces beyond individual control. Modern commemoration of Louis XVI's children emphasizes their status as victims of circumstances rather than political symbols. This approach allows historical recognition while avoiding contemporary political implications in Republican France. Their legacy ultimately transcends specific monarchist or Republican sympathies to address universal questions about childhood, family survival, and historical memory. The complete extinction of their line provides closure to their story while maintaining its relevance for understanding the human dimensions of political upheaval. When the guillotine fell on Louis XVI in 1793, 4 children remained to carry his legacy. Their subsequent fates, death, survival, exile, and extinction, complete one of history's most poignant narratives of dynastic collapse. Marie-Thérèse alone survived to adulthood, bearing witness to the complete transformation of European monarchy while maintaining the dignity that defined her character from childhood through death. Her childless marriage ensured that her father's bloodline would end with her, providing historical closure to the Bourbon dynasty's direct succession. The scientific resolution of Louis Charles's fate removed the last mystery surrounding their story, confirming that all 4 children met their destinies without hidden survival or secret descendants. Their complete story now belongs to history rather than speculation, allowing proper assessment of their significance within the broader revolutionary narrative. From the golden halls of Versailles to the stone cells of the Temple, from Austrian exile to Slovenian burial sites, their journeys mapped the transformation of European society. They were born to rule an absolute monarchy and died or lived as witnesses to its replacement by revolutionary and constitutional systems. Their story asks enduring questions about the relationship between individual lives and historical forces. Born into ultimate privilege, They experienced loss, displacement, and mortality in ways that illuminate the human costs of political upheaval. Their fates remind us that history consists not only of institutional changes, but also of personal tragedies and individual resilience. Today, more than 2 centuries after their births, Louis XVI's children rest in tombs scattered across Europe. Marie-Thérèse in Slovenia, Louis Charles's heart at Saint-Denis, while Louis-Joseph and Sophie's remains were lost to revolutionary destruction. Their dispersed burials reflect lives disrupted by historical forces beyond their control or comprehension. The extinction of their line provides final closure to the Ancien Regime, completing the transition from absolute monarchy to modern republican government. Their story belongs now to historical memory rather than contemporary politics, allowing evaluation of their significance within the broader narrative of European transformation. When a dynasty falls, the children of the fallen king become both victims and witnesses, symbols and individuals. The complete story of Louis XVI's children illustrates how historical change operates through personal experience, transforming palace children into prisoners, exiles, and ultimately historical memory. Their legacy endures not in biological descendants, but in the historical record of resilience, dignity, and survival under extraordinary circumstances. They remain, in death as in life, the children of a vanished world whose story continues to illuminate the human dimensions of historical change.